Broken heart for 10 long years, my own son turned me into his prisoner. I carried his darkness in silence, with tears I never allowed anyone to see. Every night I prayed for freedom, but every morning, I woke up with his shadow still over me. I wanted to scream, but my voice was buried under fear. I wanted to run, but my legs were chained by shame. And then, on the day I finally broke, I swore I would never stay silent again. But before I tell you how I reached that breaking point, let me introduce myself. My name is Margaret, though everyone calls me Grandma Maggie. I'm 67 years old, speaking to you now from a small town in Alabama, USA. I've lived many lives inside this one body, but nothing could have prepared me for the secret I carried all those years. Before I continue, please, if you're watching this story, subscribe, like, and click that notification bell so you don't miss the next part of my journey. And tell me in the comments, from which part of the country are you watching me today? I want to know where my story is reaching, because someone out there might need this truth. Now let me take you back to where it all began. Life wasn't always pain for me. I once had joy, dreams, and laughter. My husband, Richard, was a tall, hard-working man with rough hands but a tender heart. Together, we built a home filled with children's giggles and the smell of warm cornbread. I was a mother of 3, proud and hopeful. But when Richard died suddenly in a car accident, my whole world collapsed in a single night. I was only 43 when I became a widow, and the loneliness felt like a storm that never ended. Bills piled up, nights grew colder, and I leaned heavily on my eldest son, David. He was 21 at the time, strong and serious, stepping in like the man of the house. At first, I thought God had given me comfort through him. But little did I know, the same hands that once brought me groceries would one day bring me shame. The first sign came quietly. I remember it was a late summer night, cicadas buzzing outside the window. David stayed up with me while the younger kids slept. He told me, "Mama, you don't have to worry about anything. I'll take care of you now." His words warmed me, but his eyes, they lingered in a way that made me uneasy. I brushed it off, thinking grief was making me imagine things. Weeks passed, and I noticed his presence grew heavier. He'd stand too close in the kitchen, his hand brushing mine when it didn't need to. He'd stay too long in my room, asking about memories of Papa, but watching me in silence. I told myself it was nothing. After all, he was my son, my David. But then came the night that changed everything. It was raining hard, thunder cracking like whips in the sky. The younger children were away at a church retreat, and it was just me and David at home. I was tired, lying in bed, when I heard my door creak open. My heart thumped, thinking maybe it was the storm. But no, it was him, standing there, breathing heavy. His shadow stretched across the floor toward me. "Mama," he whispered, his voice low and strange. "I need you." I froze. I didn't understand. I couldn't understand. Before I could move, before I could even gather the scream that clawed at my throat, he stepped forward. That was the night my silence began. And that silence would last for 10 long years. But let me pause here. Because before I take you through those painful years, you need to understand how I ended up trapped in that house with nowhere to run, no voice to call for help, and no one to believe me even if I tried. It started with the way my family looked at me after Richard's death. They pitied me, but they also expected me to be strong. My neighbors whispered, "Poor Maggie raising kids alone." My church told me to stay faithful and endure trials. And David, oh David, he made sure I depended on him more with every passing day. He took control of the bills, the grocery shopping, the car repairs. First it felt like relief, but slowly it turned into a cage. If I stepped outside without telling him, he'd question me. If I spent money on something small for myself, he'd scold me like a child. My own son became my keeper, and I didn't even see it happening. One evening, about a month after the stormy night, I sat on the porch watching the sunset when he came out and placed a hand on my shoulder. My body stiffened, but he smiled like nothing was wrong. "Mama," he said, "don't you worry. Everything you need is right here, with me." And though his words sounded gentle, my stomach turned to stone. That was when I realized I was no longer free. And what happened next proved it beyond any doubt. David's hand rested on my shoulder as the sun dipped below the trees, painting the sky with shades of orange and blood red. To anyone passing by, It looked like a tender moment between a mother and her caring son. But inside me, fear tightened its grip. My own body betrayed me. I wanted to shrink away, but I forced myself to stay still. He smiled. Mama, you don't have to think anymore. About bills, about chores, about anything. I'll handle it all. You just rest. His words should have brought comfort, but I felt like a bird whose wings had been clipped. Rest. What he really meant was surrender. Slowly, he was taking every piece of control away from me. Days turned into weeks, and the atmosphere in the house grew heavier. My younger children, Sarah and Timothy, were too young to notice. They loved their big brother's protection. David's the man of the house now, Sarah would say proudly. I forced a smile, but inside I wanted to cry. David began locking the finances. He took my bank card saying, "You don't need to worry about these things anymore, Mama. I'll take care of it." At first, I thought it was kindness. But then, when I asked for $20 to buy fabric for a new church dress, he frowned and said, "We don't need to waste money on that." We. Not him. Not me. We. It was like I had no name anymore, only Mama. Under his authority. One night, after Sarah and Timothy went to bed, I tried to call my sister on the old landline phone in the kitchen. I just wanted to hear another adult voice, to feel less alone. But as I picked up the receiver, David appeared from the shadows, his eyes hard. "Who are you calling?" he asked. "My sister," I whispered. "Why?" I just miss her." He stepped closer, so close I could smell his sweat. "You don't need anyone else, Mama. You've got me." And with that, he pulled the cord from the wall. The phone went dead. My heart sank with it. The house felt smaller after that night, like the walls themselves were closing in. Still, I tried to keep things normal for Sarah and Timothy. I cooked their favorite meals, told them bedtime stories, and held them tight when thunderstorms shook the windows. But when David entered the room, the warmth vanished. His presence pressed on my chest like a weight I couldn't push off. One Sunday, I forced myself to go to church. I put on a faded blue dress and told David I needed to pray. His jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Fine. But I'll drive you." Inside the church, I wanted to cry. The hymns felt heavy, the preacher's words blurred. I wanted to stand up and shout, "Help me. Please someone see me." But my lips stayed sealed. My silence chained me. After service, an old friend, Mrs. Patterson, touched my hand. "Maggie, you look pale. Are you all right?" For a second, hope flickered in my chest. Maybe I could tell her. Maybe someone would believe me. But before I could answer, David stepped forward, smiling. "She's fine, ma'am. Just tired. I've got her." His grip on my arm was so tight, I almost winced. Mrs. Patterson smiled politely, then walked away. And my chance vanished like smoke in the wind. That night, David punished me for daring to reach out. His eyes burned with fury as he said, "Don't ever make me look weak in front of people again." His voice wasn't loud, but it sliced through me sharper than a knife. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. The next morning, he acted as if nothing happened. He made breakfast for Sarah and Timothy, laughing with them, while I sat at the table silent, my hands trembling around my coffee cup. They saw a loving brother. I saw my captor. Weeks passed. My soul grew heavier with each sunrise. I prayed harder, but heaven felt distant. One night, I knelt by my bed whispering, "Lord, please send me a sign. Show me a way out. Anything." And then something happened. It was late, around midnight, when I heard Sarah scream from her room. My heart raced as I bolted down the hallway. Bursting through the door, I found her sitting up in bed, tears streaming down her face. "What happened, baby?" I asked, pulling her into my arms. She sobbed. I had a nightmare. I saw David, and he was hurting you." My blood froze. Out of the mouths of children, truth sometimes spills without knowing. Before I could comfort her further, I heard footsteps behind me. David stood in the doorway, his face unreadable, his shadow stretching across the room like a dark warning. "Everything okay in here?" he asked softly, too softly. I clutched Sarah tighter, my heart pounding. "Yes," I whispered, though inside every fiber of me screamed no. David's eyes locked onto mine, and in that silent exchange I knew. He knew that Sarah had seen something. Maybe not with her eyes, but in her spirit. Children have a way of sensing evil long before adults admit it. And for the first time in years I felt terror not just for myself but for my daughter. I held Sarah close, rocking her like I used to when she was a baby, my arms trembling around her small body. David stood in the doorway, leaning against the frame, watching us in that way that made my skin crawl. His face was calm, almost too calm, but his eyes, they burned like hot coals, daring me to slip, to say the wrong word. She just had a nightmare, I said quickly, forcing a smile as I smoothed Sarah's hair. Nothing more. David tilted his head, like he was studying me. Then he stepped into the room, his shadow swallowing us. Sarah clung tighter to me, burying her face into my chest. Nightmares aren't real, David said slowly, his voice low. Isn't that right, Mama? My lips trembled. That's right. He crouched beside Sarah's bed and placed a hand on her shoulder. She flinched. My heart nearly stopped. He smiled anyway, ignoring her fear. You're safe, little sister. I'll always protect you. You know that, don't you? Sarah nodded quickly, though her little body was stiff as stone. Good girl. He stood up, his eyes flicking back to me. Then, without another word, he walked out, shutting the door softly behind him. The silence that followed was thick and suffocating. Sarah lifted her head, whispering, Mama, I don't like how he looks at us. Her words cut me deeper than any knife. I forced a smile, kissed her forehead and whispered, Don't worry, baby. Mama's here. But inside I was unraveling. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat at the edge of my bed, staring at the dark wall, my mind spinning. For 10 years, I had borne the weight of David's evil alone. But now, the thought that he might turn his hunger toward Sarah filled me with a new kind of terror. Silence was no longer just killing me, it was endangering my children. The next morning I tried to keep everything normal. I cooked pancakes, forced laughter, and acted like a mother holding her home together. But my eyes never left Sarah. Every time David touched her shoulder or ruffled her hair, I flinched. At church that Sunday, I watched Sarah sing hymns with the children's choir. Her sweet voice rose above the others, pure and innocent. I felt tears prick my eyes. She was light, a light I couldn't allow David to snuff out. After the service, I lingered in the pews, lost in thought. That was when Pastor John approached me. Sister Maggie, you seem burdened, he said gently. I opened my mouth, wanting so badly to confess, to pour out the truth. But when I glanced behind me, I saw David standing at the doorway, arms crossed, staring. My throat closed.
Infine, Pastori whispered.
Just tired. He nodded slowly, clearly unconvinced, but he let it go. And once again silence chained me. Back at home the days blurred together. Sarah grew quieter, more withdrawn. Timothy was too young to notice, but I could see it. She was scared of her own brother. And David seemed to sense my growing defiance. One evening, after the younger children had gone to bed, he cornered me in the kitchen. The only light came from the flickering bulb above us. His voice was calm, but the venom in it made me shake. You've been different lately, Mama. Watching me, questioning me. Do you think I don't see it? I forced my hands to stay steady as I washed a plate. I don't know what you're talking about. He stepped closer, lowering his voice to a whisper. Don't forget who keeps this family together. Without me, you'd have nothing. You'd be nothing. His words stabbed deep. But this time, instead of shrinking, something inside me stirred. Rage. The rage of a mother. The rage of a woman who had been broken for too long. I turned to him, meeting his eyes for the first time in years. You don't own me, David. The room went silent. His jaw tightened. His eyes darkened. For a moment, I thought he might strike me. But then he smiled, slow, chilling. We'll see about that, he said softly before walking away. That night I locked my bedroom door for the first time in years. My hands shook as I slid the old wooden chair under the knob. I sat on the bed, heart pounding, listening to every creak of the house. And then it came. The sound of footsteps. Heavy. Slow. Stopping right outside my door. The knob turned once. Then again, harder this time. The chair rattled against the floor. I held my breath, clutching the blanket to my chest, tears streaming down my face. Then came his voice, low and cold through the door. You think a lock can keep me out, Mama? My heart nearly stopped. The knob rattled violently one last time, then silence. But I knew it wasn't over. He would try again. And this time I wasn't sure the lock would hold. I sat frozen in the darkness, my breath caught in my throat. The house was silent again, but my ears rang with the echo of David's words. "You think a lock can keep me out, Mama?" The chair under the doorknob trembled from the force he had used, and I knew it was only a matter of time before it wouldn't be enough. That night I didn't sleep. I stayed up, clutching my Bible in trembling hands, whispering desperate prayers into the darkness. When morning finally came, sunlight spilling weakly into my room, I heard Sarah and Timothy laughing in the kitchen. For a moment I closed my eyes and let the sound soothe me. Their innocence was the only light left in my world. But when I walked out, David was already there, flipping pancakes as if nothing had happened. His face calm, his voice light, but when his eyes met mine they held a silent warning. "Morning, Mama," he said smoothly. I forced myself to nod, though my knees shook. "Morning." He slid a pancake onto Sarah's plate, then turned back to me with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "See? I take care of this family. Always have. Always will." My stomach turned, but I stayed silent. Later that day, I found myself standing at the sink, staring out the window while Sarah and Timothy played in the yard. I wanted to run, to pack a bag, take the children, and never look back. But where would we go? Who would believe me if I told them what David had done? A son against his mother. Who would take my side? The thought paralyzed me. But deep inside, I knew something had to change. That night, after the children went to bed, I pulled Sarah aside. I knelt in front of her, brushing her hair back gently. "Baby," I whispered, "if you ever feel scared, if David ever makes you feel uncomfortable, you tell me. Do you understand?" Her little eyes widened, and she nodded quickly. "I don't like him, Mama. Sometimes when he looks at me it feels wrong." My heart shattered, but I kept my voice steady. "You're safe with me, Sarah. I promise." But as I tucked her in, my promise felt heavy. Because deep down I didn't know if I could keep it. Days turned into weeks. David's control tightened. He checked the mail before I could. He counted the groceries. He even started timing my trips to the corner store. The house became a prison and he was the guard. But then one afternoon something unexpected happened. I was folding laundry when Sarah came running in, her face pale. "Mama," she cried. "Come quick." I dropped the clothes and followed her outside. Timothy was on the ground, clutching his arm, tears streaming down his face. He had fallen from the tree in the yard. My heart raced. His arm was bent at an angle that made me sick. "We need to get him to the hospital," I gasped. David appeared from the porch, calm as ever. "It's just a bruise. He'll be fine." "No," I snapped, surprising even myself. "He needs a doctor." David's eyes narrowed, but I stood firm, clutching Timothy to me. "We're going. Now." For the first time in years I defied him openly. At the hospital, while the doctor examined Timothy, I felt a strange mix of fear and freedom. For the first time, I was outside the walls of my cage, surrounded by people who weren't under David's control. I wanted to scream the truth, to beg for help. But when the doctor asked how Timothy had fallen, David answered smoothly, "Kids will be kids. He climbed too high." The doctor nodded, and just like that, the chance slipped away. Still, as I sat in that sterile room, holding Timothy's good hand, I realized something. For the first time, David couldn't stop me from saving my child. That small act of defiance lit a spark inside me. When we returned home, David was silent. Too silent. The kind of silence that made my skin crawl. That night, as I tucked Sarah and Timothy into bed, my stomach knotted with dread. And sure enough, when the house grew quiet, the footsteps came again. I had locked my door, pushed the chair under the knob, clutching the Bible to my chest. The knob rattled once, then twice. But this time it didn't stop. The wood groaned, the chair scraped, and suddenly, the door burst open. I screamed, and there he was. David, standing in the doorway, his face twisted with rage, his chest rising and falling like a storm about to break. "You think you can defy me, Mama?" he hissed. I backed against the wall, trembling. My heart thundered in my chest. And then, His eyes flicked to the Bible in my hands. He laughed, a cruel, hollow sound. God won't save you from me. The sound of the door splintering still echoed in my ears as David stepped into my room. His broad shoulders filled the doorway, his shadow stretching across the floor like a predator closing in on its prey. I pressed my back against the wall, clutching the Bible so tightly my knuckles turned white. You think you can hide from me, Mama? His voice was low, trembling with fury. You think a lock, a chair, or even your prayers will stop me? I tried to speak, but my voice caught in my throat. All I could manage was a whisper. Leave me alone, David. He laughed, a hollow, bitter sound that made my stomach twist. Leave you alone? After everything I've done for you? After I carried this family when Papa died? You owe me, Mama. You'll always owe me. My heart pounded so loudly I thought it might explode. For years I had bowed my head, kept silent, endured. But something inside me snapped. I lifted the Bible like a shield and shouted, No more. You are not my husband, David. You are my son. And what you've done is evil. For the first time his smile faltered. His eyes flashed with something I had never seen before, doubt. But then it vanished, replaced by pure rage. He lunged toward me, grabbing my wrist, squeezing until I thought my bones might break. I cried out, but he only tightened his grip. You'll regret saying that, he growled. In that moment I realized I had two choices. Submit again, or fight with everything I had left. Summoning every ounce of strength, I swung the Bible hard against his chest. It wasn't much, but it startled him just enough for me to slip free. I ran to the other side of the room, my chest heaving, my legs shaking. For a moment we stared at each other, me trembling with fear but fueled by desperation. Him breathing heavily, his eyes wild. And then footsteps. Small, hurried footsteps down the hall. Mama! Sarah's voice called, trembling. My blood turned to ice. No. I gasped. Stay in your room, baby. But it was too late. Sarah appeared in the doorway, her nightgown hanging loose around her small frame, her eyes wide with fear as she saw her brother looming over me. David turned slowly, his face twisting into something darker than I had ever seen. You should be in bed, he said, his voice dripping with menace. Sarah froze, her little body trembling. In that split second, I knew what was about to happen. For 10 years, I had borne his evil alone. But now, with Sarah standing there, I saw it in his eyes. He was going to cross a line that could never be undone. Don't you touch her! I screamed, throwing myself between them. My arms spread wide, shielding my daughter with my body. If you want to hurt someone, hurt me, not her. David's jaw tightened, his fists clenched, his entire body shook with rage. And then, he did something that shattered what little safety we had left. He reached past me, grabbing Sarah by the arm. She screamed. I clawed at his hands, desperate, but his grip was iron. She's mine too, he hissed. Those words, they burned into my soul. I fought with everything in me, nails digging into his skin, tears blinding my eyes. Let her go, I begged. Please God, let her go. And then suddenly, Timothy's voice rang out from behind us. Get away from my sister. I turned stunned. My little boy stood in the hallway, holding something in his small hands. A baseball bat. His face pale but his eyes blazing. David turned, laughing cruelly. What are you gonna do with that, little man? Timothy's hand shook, but he gripped the bat tighter. I'll protect Mama and Sarah. I'm not scared of you. The air froze. For the first time the three of us, me, Sarah, and Timothy, stood together against him. But David only sneered, his grip still tight on Sarah's arm. Then come try, he taunted. Timothy raised the bat. My heart thundered, torn between terror and hope. And in that breathless moment, as my son faced his monster of a brother, I realized this night would end in either freedom or destruction. The hallway was frozen in silence, except for Sarah's whimpers and my pounding heartbeat. David's hand clamped on her tiny arm like a vice. His lips curled into that twisted grin that had haunted me for years. And then there was Timothy, my little boy. His small frame trembling, but his hands clutching that bat like it was the sword of an angel. His eyes locked on his older brother, burning with a courage I had never seen in him before. Let her go, Timothy shouted, his voice cracking but fierce. David laughed, a low mocking sound. Or what? You'll swing at me. He tugged Sarah closer, making her cry out in pain. You're just a boy. You can't stop me. My heart twisted. I wanted to scream to shield them both, but my legs felt rooted to the ground. For 10 years I had carried this darkness alone. But now, in front of me, my children were staring into the face of the same evil I had endured. Timothy's grip tightened. He lifted the bat higher. If you hurt Mama, if you hurt Sarah, I swear I'll. Enough! David roared, his voice echoing through the house. He let go of Sarah with one hand and shoved me hard against the wall. My head hit the plaster, stars exploding in my vision. Sarah screamed, stumbling into the corner, clutching her arm. And that was the moment Timothy moved. With a cry that was half fear, half fury, he swung the bat with all his strength. It connected with David's side, thwack. The sound sharp and sickening. David staggered back, his face contorting with shock. For the first time in years, I saw something new in his eyes. Pain. You little brat, he snarled, clutching his ribs. His fury exploded, and he lunged toward Timothy. No. I screamed, throwing myself between them. David shoved me aside like I was nothing. He raised his fist, aimed straight at his little brother. But Timothy swung again. This time, the bat cracked against David's arm. He roared in pain, dropping to one knee. The house erupted into chaos. Sarah was sobbing, Timothy was panting, and I was shaking so hard I thought I'd collapse. David looked up at us, his face twisted in rage, his chest heaving. You think you've won? He spat. You think this is over? You're mine, Mama. Always. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. He staggered to his feet, his eyes wild, and then he stormed out of the room. The front door slammed so hard the walls shook. Silence followed, heavy and suffocating. Timothy dropped the bat, his small hands trembling. Mama, did I do the right thing? I pulled him into my arms, kissing his head through my tears. You saved us, baby. You saved us. Sarah crawled into my lap too, and for a brief moment, we huddled together on the floor, clinging to one another like survivors of a storm. But deep down I knew it wasn't over. David would come back. And when he did, he would be angrier, more dangerous than ever. The question was, what would I do when that moment came? For the first time in 10 years, my silence was broken inside me. I had fought back, even if it was through my children. But now I faced a choice. Stay in this house, waiting for David's return, or finally gather the courage to run, no matter the cost. I lay awake that night, holding Sarah and Timothy close as they slept. My eyes stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. For the first time in years, I felt a small flicker of something I thought I had lost forever. Hope. But just before dawn I heard it. The crunch of gravel outside. The low rumble of an engine. Headlights swept across the window. He was back. The rumble of the engine outside made my stomach twist into knots. I froze, my arms tightening around Sarah and Timothy as they slept soundly beside me. My heart pounded so loudly I was afraid it would wake them. Headlights flashed across the window again, then disappeared as the engine cut off. Silence. He was here. I slipped out of bed, my bare feet cold against the wooden floor. Slowly, I crept to the window, pulling the curtain just enough to peek outside. There he was. David. Standing by the car, his silhouette sharp in the moonlight. He wasn't empty-handed. My breath caught when I saw the shape of a bottle glinting in his fist. And in his other hand, something long. A crowbar. My knees buckled. This wasn't the son who once brought me flowers from the garden. This wasn't the boy who had promised to protect his siblings after their father's death. This was a man consumed by rage, ready to destroy anything in his path. I turned back to the children, shaking. I had to protect them. Somehow. I shook Timothy gently. Baby, wake up, I whispered urgently. His eyes fluttered open, heavy with sleep. Mama. Listen to me, I said, my voice trembling. Take your sister. Go to the back room. Stay quiet, no matter what you hear. Don't come out until I tell you. Sarah stirred, rubbing her eyes. What's happening? Just do what I say, I whispered, kissing their foreheads. Please. Timothy nodded, his face pale. He took Sarah's hand and guided her out of the room. I watched them disappear into the shadows, my heart breaking. Then I heard it. The sound of heavy boots on the porch. A pause. And then bang. The front door shook under the first blow of the crowbar. Wood cracked, hinges groaned. My body jolted with every hit. Bang. Bang. The door finally gave way, swinging open with a crash. "Mama," David's voice sang out, dragging my name in a tone that sent chills down my spine. Come out wherever you are." My breath hitched. I backed toward the kitchen, grabbing the first thing I could find, an old iron skillet. My hands trembled around the handle, but I held it tight. His footsteps thudded through the living room, closer and closer. Then his shadow stretched across the kitchen floor. "There you are," he hissed. I raised the skillet, my arms shaking. "Get out of my house, David." He laughed. "Your house. This is my house now. My rules. My family." He slammed the crowbar against the wall, the sound making me flinch. My whole body screamed to run, but something inside me refused. I planted my feet, gripping the skillet tighter. "You won't touch them," I said through clenched teeth. "Not Sarah. Not Timothy. Not anymore." His grin widened. "And who's going to stop me?" "You." He lunged forward, raising the crowbar. My heart lurched. And just as he swung, the back door burst open. Floodlights cut across the kitchen. "Sheriff's Department. Drop the weapon." Voices thundered through the house, boots stomping across the floor. For a moment time froze. David's eyes widened, his chest heaving. The crowbar clattered to the ground. And in that instant I realized, Timothy had done it. My little boy. He had disobeyed me. Instead of hiding in the back room, he had run out the back door, straight to the neighbors. He had saved us. But it wasn't over yet. Because as the deputies surged into the kitchen, David's face twisted into something even darker. And before anyone could grab him, he snatched the bottle in his other hand, smashed it against the counter, and held the jagged glass to his own throat. "You take me in," he growled. "And I swear we all go down together." All right, here's the full Chapter 8, continuing from the cliffhanger in Chapter 7. Chapter 8. The room froze. The jagged bottle glistened under the sheriff's flashlight, its sharp edges pressed against David's throat. His eyes darted wildly, sweat dripping down his forehead, his chest heaving like a cornered animal. "Stay back," he shouted, his voice breaking. "If you touch me, I'll end it right here. And I'll take her with me." The deputies spread out cautiously, guns drawn but steady. Their voices were calm but firm. "Put the weapon down, son," one of them said. "Nobody wants this to end badly." But I could see it in David's eyes. He wasn't bluffing. He was too far gone, too lost in his own storm of rage and pain. My heart raced. My legs felt weak. Every instinct screamed for me to run, to hide. But another voice deep inside whispered, "This is the moment. If I stay silent, someone will die." I swallowed hard, tears stinging my eyes. My voice trembled, but I forced it out. "David, please," I whispered. "Stop this. You don't have to do this." His head snapped toward me, eyes blazing. "Don't you talk to me like you care," he spat. "You made me this way. You're the reason I am what I am." Gasps rippled through the deputies. Their eyes flickered from him to me, confusion and suspicion dawning in their faces. The truth. It was clawing at the walls of my chest, begging to come out. I had buried it for years, swallowed it down until it poisoned every part of me. But now, here with guns raised, my son bleeding madness into the air, there was no more hiding. My lips trembled. My knees almost gave out. But I spoke. "They don't know, David," I said, my voice breaking. "They don't know what you did to me." The deputies froze. One of them glanced sharply at me, his brows furrowing. David's grip on the bottle faltered. His chest rose and fell, his face twisting with something between rage and panic. "Shut up," he hissed. Tears streamed down my face. "For 10 years you used me. For 10 years you broke me night after night. And I stayed silent. I stayed silent to protect you, to protect everyone from knowing. But not anymore." The room was deathly quiet. Even the deputies looked shaken, their jaws clenched tight as they processed my words. David's hand trembled, the glass pressing harder against his skin. A thin line of blood appeared at his throat. You think you can make me the monster?" he snarled. "You think you can say that in front of them and walk away? No. If I go down, you go down too." He lunged, stepping toward me with the jagged bottle raised. "Mom, no." Timothy's voice rang out. I hadn't realized he had slipped back into the kitchen, Sarah clutching his hand. My heart stopped. My children were watching the ugliest truth of our lives spill out into the open. The deputies reacted fast. "Drop it now," one bellowed, his gun cocking loudly. But David didn't drop it. He lunged forward, his eyes locked on me. And for a split second, I thought it was the end. Bang! The shot tore through the air like thunder. David's body jerked violently. The bottle shattered from his grip as he stumbled backward, collapsing onto the floor. I screamed. Sarah screamed. Timothy covered her eyes. But it was too late. They had seen everything. Deputies rushed forward, shouting commands, grabbing David's arms, pressing on his wound. Blood pooled on the floor, dark and slick. His eyes fluttered open, rage flickering into something else, something I had never seen in him before. Fear. I collapsed against the wall, my body shaking uncontrollably. The secret was out. The burden I carried for 10 years was no longer mine alone. But as the ambulance was called, as the deputies swarmed my kitchen, I knew this was not the end. This was only the beginning of the reckoning. The sirens came first. Loud, shrill, echoing across the night as red and blue lights bathed the house in harsh flashes. The deputies had called for backup, and within minutes, the quiet street turned into chaos. I sat slumped against the wall, trembling, my hands sticky with sweat and tears. Sarah clung to Timothy, her small body shaking. He wrapped his arms around her, trying to shield her from the sight of David lying on the kitchen floor. Blood. So much blood. The deputies knelt over him, their gloves slick as they pressed rags against the wound. One of them shouted for more bandages. Another barked into his radio, calling for an ambulance to hurry. I wanted to move, to help, to do something. But I couldn't. My legs were useless. My heart was hammering so fast it felt like it might burst. And then, as if the world hadn't already broken apart, David's eyes fluttered open. His lips parted. Mom. It wasn't rage this time. It wasn't a threat. It was small. Weak. Like the voice of the little boy he used to be. Tears burned down my cheeks. My chest heaved. I wanted to reach for him. I wanted to tell him I still loved him. Even after everything. That I wished he had been different. That I wished I had been stronger. But before I could move, the deputies were hauling me back. "Ma'am, stay clear. He's in custody now." Custody. My son. My abuser. My blood. The stretcher rattled as the paramedics rushed in, lifting him onto it, strapping him down. His eyes met mine one last time as they carried him out. There was something there. Anger, yes, but also a flash of fear. Maybe even regret. And then he was gone, swallowed by flashing lights. The house grew quieter, but not calmer. The silence was heavy, suffocating. I pulled Timothy and Sarah close, their faces buried in my arms. That's when the sheriff himself stepped into the kitchen. His boots clicked against the tile, his jaw tight, his eyes sharp. He didn't look at me with pity. He looked at me like a man who wanted answers. "Ma'am," he said firmly. "What exactly did you mean back there? About your son doing things to you?" The question sliced through me. I stiffened, my throat closing. My children looked up at me, confusion and fear in their eyes. I wanted to say nothing. I wanted to bury it again, pretend it hadn't slipped out. But it was too late. The deputies had heard. The neighbors had heard. Timothy had heard. And Sarah. Sweet Sarah. She was too young to understand, but she had heard enough to know something was wrong. I opened my mouth, but no words came. My lips trembled. The sheriff crouched to meet my eyes. "Ma'am, you need to tell me the truth. If what you said is true, this is bigger than tonight. This is a crime that's been going on for years." My chest caved in. I sobbed, shaking my head. "I didn't want it," I cried. "I didn't ask for it. He forced me. For 10 years he forced me, and I stayed silent because he's my son." As I was ashamed. Because I thought no one would believe me. The sheriff's face hardened, but there was no shock in his eyes. Just the quiet, heavy weight of someone who had seen too much of the world. Behind him, I heard one deputy whisper to another. 10 years? Dear God. Timothy's arms tightened around me. I looked down at him, his small face pale and his eyes wide with tears. He was shaking. Mama, is it true? He whispered. The words broke me all over again. How could I answer? How could I explain the unexplainable to a child? But before I could speak, the sheriff stood tall. We'll need you to come down to the station, ma'am. We'll need an official statement. And we'll need to contact child services for the kids. My stomach dropped. Child services.
No, igaspat, kluching Sara tiktar.
Please don't take them from me. They're all I have left. The sheriff's eyes softened slightly, but his tone stayed firm. We're not here to punish you. We're here to protect them. But after what you've just told us, we can't ignore it. Tears streamed down my face. My whole world was unraveling. My son was in handcuffs, bleeding in the back of an ambulance. My children were staring at me with fear and confusion. And now, the law itself was threatening to rip what little family I had left apart. And just when I thought things couldn't break any further, a deputy rushed in breathless. Sheriff, we just got word from the hospital. David's condition, it's critical. They're not sure he'll make it through the night. My breath caught. The room spun. If he died, I would lose him forever. The boy I once cradled, the man who ruined me, the son I loved and feared. And if he lived, the truth of what he had done would put him in prison for the rest of his life. Either way, the family I had known was gone. The hospital smelled of bleach and sorrow. The halls echoed with hurried footsteps, machines beeping, doors swinging open and shut. I sat hunched in a stiff plastic chair, my hands clasped so tightly my knuckles had turned white. David was behind the glass doors of the ICU. Tubes ran into his body, machines hummed around him, keeping him tethered to life. His chest rose and fell in uneven rhythms. His face looked pale, almost childlike again. Timothy and Sarah sat beside me, clinging to each other. They hadn't spoken much since the night before. The sheriff had allowed them to stay with me under supervision, but child services had already been called. The thought of losing them gnawed at me more than anything else. I leaned closer to the glass, whispering to myself, how did we get here, David? How did my little boy become my destroyer? A nurse walked past, giving me a sympathetic glance. But sympathy didn't heal wounds like these. Soon the sheriff arrived, his face grim. He stood beside me, his hands resting heavy on his belt. They don't think he'll last the night, he said quietly. If there's anything you want to say to him, you should say it now. My throat tightened. What could I say? That I loved him? That I hated him? That he had ruined me? Yet still, a part of me couldn't let go? I stood slowly, my legs trembling, and walked into the ICU. The air was cold, sharp, filled with the constant beeping of machines. I sat by his bed, staring at his face. His eyes fluttered open for a moment, cloudy and weak. Mom, he croaked, his voice thin as paper. Tears spilled down my cheeks. David. His lips quivered. I'm sorry. The words were broken, almost a whisper, but they cut through me like a blade. Sorry. After 10 years of torment. After a lifetime of silence. I held his hand, the same hand that had caused me so much pain. And I squeezed it, sobbing. Why, David? Why did you do it? He coughed weakly, his eyes glistening. I don't know. I was angry. Lost. I hated the world. And you were there. His breath rattled. I thought I had power. But I was just broken. I shook my head, the tears flowing faster. You destroyed me. You destroyed us. His lips moved again, struggling. Forgive me. Mama. My chest tightened. Forgiveness. Such a small word for such a big wound. Could I forgive him? Could I forgive myself for staying silent for so long? I bent my head, kissing his forehead gently. I don't know if I can forgive you, David, but I pray. I pray God does. The machine beeped faster then slower. His eyes closed. And with one last exhale, his hand went limp in mine. The monitor flatlined. I screamed. Nurses rushed in. The sheriff stepped forward. Timothy cried out, pulling Sarah into his arms as she sobbed. David was gone. My son. My abuser. My curse and my grief. Gone. The days that followed were a blur. There was an investigation. There were statements, paperwork, endless questions. But the truth was out now, the shame no longer buried in my chest. Child services came, but after long meetings and assurances, they let Timothy and Sarah stay with me. The sheriff vouched for me. He told them I was a victim, not a criminal. At David's funeral, few people came. The air was heavy, the coffin dark and plain. I stood over it, my children beside me. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel fear. I felt free, but freedom carried scars. Scars that would never fade. I turned to Timothy and Sarah, my voice steady but soft. We are going to build a new life now. One where there are no more secrets. No more silence. We will live in truth, no matter how painful it is. They nodded, holding my hands tightly. As the coffin lowered into the earth, I whispered one final message to the man who had once been my little boy. You broke me, David, but you will not break the ones I love. Your shadow ends here. And with that, I walked away, carrying my children, and the weight of my scars, into a future I prayed would finally be free. Broken Heart Life Lesson. Silence protects no one. The truth may hurt, but hiding it only lets the wound grow deeper. Speak out, even when your voice trembles, because freedom lives on the other side of fear. The first days after David's death were the hardest. The house felt hollow, every creak of the floorboards echoing like a memory. Timothy and Sarah clung to me constantly, afraid that the world might suddenly rip apart again. I held them tight, but inside I was crumbling. The neighbors whispered. Some offered sympathy, others barely looked at me. I felt their eyes on me whenever I walked outside. Pity, curiosity, judgment. It was like carrying the shame of 10 years on my back in plain sight. But I had no choice. I had to be strong for my children. For the first time in a decade, they were truly safe. But the freedom I felt was mixed with grief, guilt, and fear. One evening while I was cooking dinner, Sarah tugged at my sleeve. Her little face was pale. Mama, why did David do those things to you? The question pierced me like a knife. I wanted to hide it, to say something comforting, but there was no comforting answer. He was sick, baby. Very sick, I whispered. But none of that was your fault, and none of it was mine. He made wrong choices, terrible choices. And now we must focus on healing. Sarah nodded slowly, but the sadness in her eyes didn't leave. Timothy came up behind her, wrapping his small arms around both of us. We'll be okay, Mama, he said quietly. We have each other. I nodded, feeling a flicker of hope. Maybe he was right. Maybe we could survive this and rebuild. The next morning, I received a call from the sheriff. He wanted me to come down to the station to finalize statements and to ensure David's past crimes were documented for the legal system. I dreaded it. Talking about the horrors I endured, the shame, the terror, the years of silence, was like ripping open an old wound. But I knew it had to be done. When I arrived, I saw the faces of the deputies who had been at my house the night David broke in. Their eyes were kind but wary. They treated me like a survivor, not like a victim to be judged. As I recounted the years, every lie, every threat, every night of silent terror, I felt something strange. Relief. Power. The truth long hidden was finally out. Yet even as I spoke, my heart remained heavy. I had survived, yes, but the scars would never fully leave. That night, back at home, I found myself staring out the window long after the children had gone to bed. The moonlight spilled across the yard, serene and calm, but inside I felt restless. A car pulled into the driveway. My heart skipped a beat. Was it a neighbor? Someone checking in? Or was it another danger I hadn't seen coming? The headlights swept across the yard. I froze. And then a figure stepped out of the car. A stranger, tall with a shadowed face. My breath caught in my throat. Are you Mrs. Anderson? The voice called. Calm, firm, almost too controlled. I nodded slowly. Yes, who are you? He took a step closer. My name is Detective Harris. I'm following up on your case. And I need to speak with you about something important. It concerns your son. And what may still be at risk. My stomach dropped. I thought it was over. I thought the nightmare had ended. But the detective's words, the tone in his voice, told me that the past was not done with me yet. I stepped back, gripping the doorframe. My children stirred inside the house, their muffled voices calling for me. And just as I was about to speak, the detective held up his hand. "You need to see this," he said, reaching into his coat pocket. My heart thundered. Something inside me knew. Whatever he was about to show me would change everything again. Detective Harris held out a small envelope, its edges worn and corners slightly bent. My hands trembled as I reached for it. Something about the weight of it felt heavier than paper and plastic combined. This is about David," he said quietly. "It wasn't just what happened here in this house. There are things you don't know. Things he may have left behind. You need to see them." I swallowed hard and opened the envelope. Inside were photographs, letters, and documents. My hands shook so violently I almost dropped them. The first photograph made my stomach twist. David smiling, holding a young girl I didn't recognize. Her eyes were wide, fearful, and she clung to him the way my own children had clung to me for safety. My breath caught. Who is she?" I whispered. Detective Harris shook his head gravely. "We're not sure. Some of the files suggest he may have done this to others, children he had access to, people in his past who were vulnerable. We're investigating." Tears sprang to my eyes. I felt like I was falling into a bottomless pit. For 10 years I had thought it was only my family. Only me. Only my children. But now the scope of his darkness stretched farther than I could imagine. I felt sick, trembling. I didn't know. I thought it was just us." "No," Harris said firmly. "You were not alone in this. But your courage in speaking out, surviving and protecting your children, it's what may help stop him from hurting anyone else. You have to cooperate with us. We need everything you remember, every detail." I nodded weakly, clutching the envelope to my chest. Somehow holding it felt like holding the last thread of my sanity, fragile but real. That night I couldn't sleep. I walked from room to room, checking on Timothy and Sarah, listening to their soft breathing as they slept. I hugged them tightly, whispering promises I hoped I could keep. "We will stay safe. No one will hurt us again. I promise." But even as I whispered, I felt a shadow creeping over my heart. How many more victims had David left behind? How many others were still in danger? The next morning there was a knock on the door. I froze, my heart hammering. It was the kind of knock that carries weight, deliberate, careful, not casual. I opened the door to see a man in a dark suit, briefcase in hand. His eyes were sharp, calculating, but there was something unsettling about the way he looked at me. "Mrs. Anderson?" he asked. "I'm Agent Cole, Federal Investigations. We're following up on your son's activities. We need your full cooperation. There are things happening now that could put your family at risk." I stepped back, my hands trembling. "Risk? What do you mean?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he opened his briefcase, revealing maps, notes, and photographs that made my stomach drop. Locations I recognized, some letters, and a small USB drive with files. "This is all linked to your son," Agent Cole said grimly. "And some of it involves people who are alive. People he's been targeting recently. We need you to tell us everything you know. Lives could depend on it." My hands shook as I took in the materials. My home, my safe haven, no longer felt safe. The nightmare wasn't over. It had only evolved. And then my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You can't hide. You never really escaped." My blood ran cold. I looked at Agent Cole. Who sent this?" He shook his head. "We don't know. But whoever it is, they're watching. And they're not alone." My children stirred in the next room. I hugged the envelope, the maps, and the USB drive to my chest. My mind raced. My heart pounded. And I knew with absolute certainty that the terror we had survived, the terror of David, was far from over. I had thought the worst was behind me. But now a new storm was coming, and this time it could reach beyond my house, beyond my family. And I had no idea how to stop it. The sun had barely risen when I realized the danger was closer than I had imagined. A car I didn't recognize was parked across the street, engine running. Its dark windows reflected the early morning light, hiding whoever was inside. My heart pounded in my chest. Timothy and Sarah were still asleep upstairs. I had to protect them. I had survived David, but surviving this unknown threat, felt different. More calculated. More dangerous. I grabbed the envelope, the USB drive, and my phone. I quietly crept upstairs to wake the children. Timothy. Sarah, wake up. I whispered urgently. Timothy opened his eyes slowly, sensing my panic. Mama, what's wrong? There's someone outside, I said softly. We need to stay quiet and be ready to move. Can you pack a bag with clothes and anything important? We might need to leave quickly. Sarah rubbed her eyes, frightened. But where will we go? I don't know yet, I admitted, my voice shaking. But we can't stay here. Not until we know what's happening. We moved quickly and silently, packing essentials. I included the children's favorite toys and blankets. Anything to make them feel safe. Timothy kept glancing out the window, his small body tense, ready to defend his sister if needed. Once our bags were ready, I realized I had to make a decision. I could call the police, yes, but what if this person was already watching the house? What if calling attention made us a target? I remembered the envelope, the USB drive, and the photographs Agent Cole had given me. Maybe there were clues in there. Information that could help me understand who was after us and why. I grabbed the USB drive and opened it on my laptop. Files scrolled across the screen. Locations, addresses, dates, even lists of names. One document stood out. A recent entry marked in red. Anderson residence. Family vulnerable. Observation ongoing. Prepare intervention. My stomach sank. Someone was watching us. Someone knew we were alone. And they were planning to act. A sudden noise from downstairs made me freeze. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Someone was inside the house. Mama, Timothy whispered, his eyes wide with fear. I grabbed the iron skillet from the kitchen, my first weapon, my old protector, and whispered, stay behind me. Don't make a sound. The footsteps grew closer. Then the shadow appeared at the bottom of the stairs. A man tall, wearing a hood that obscured his face. His hands were empty, but his posture was threatening. Hello, he called, voice calm but menacing. I know you're here, Mrs. Anderson. Come out, and maybe we can talk. I tightened my grip on the skillet. Who are you? What do you want? He laughed softly. Your son left something behind. Something I need. And now you're going to help me get it. My blood ran cold. He knew about David. He knew about the envelope. About the USB drive. I stepped forward, placing myself between him and my children. You will not touch my family, I said firmly, my voice stronger than I felt. The man's smile was hidden, but I could feel it in the tone of his voice. That's cute. But you're out of options, Mrs. Anderson. Step aside and no one gets hurt. Stay in my way, and... Before he could finish, Timothy stepped forward, holding a metal rod he had found in the garage. Back off, he shouted, his voice shaking but determined. The man froze, surprised. A child, he sneered. Really? I swung the skillet toward him. It connected with his arm. Thwack! And he cursed loudly. The distraction was enough for me to grab Timothy and Sarah and run for the back door. We ran into the yard, hearts hammering, bags in hand. The stranger stumbled behind us, but then I heard sirens in the distance. Agent Cole must have anticipated this and alerted backup. The man cursed again and vanished into the shadows as deputies and federal agents swarmed the street. We were safe. For now. But as I hugged my children tightly, tears streaming down my face, I realized something terrifying. David was gone, but danger was not. The past I thought I had buried was alive, and now it had a new face, one that wanted to destroy what little family I had left. And I had no choice but to fight. The flashing red and blue lights painted my house in chaos. Deputies rushed through the door, weapons drawn, shouting commands as neighbors peeked from their windows. I clutched Timothy and Sarah close to me, my body still trembling from the fight inside. Agent Cole pushed through the crowd. Mrs. Anderson, are you hurt? I shook my head quickly. No, but he was here. Inside. He said David left something behind. He knew about us. He wanted the USB drive. Cole's jaw tightened. Then it's worse than I thought. They're after the files. Whoever your son was working with, they're not finished. And they don't care who they hurt to get what they want. His words pierced me like knives. I thought David's evil had ended with him. But now it seemed he had planted seeds that were still growing, strangling their way into my family's life. The deputies combed through the house, but the man was gone. Disappeared into the night like a shadow. They found broken glass from the back door, muddy footprints on the kitchen floor, and nothing more. Timothy wouldn't let go of the metal rod he had used to defend us. His little hands shook, but he held on to it like a soldier gripping his only weapon. Sarah clung to my waist, silent tears soaking my dress. Agent Cole leaned close. We can't keep you here. It's not safe anymore. There's a safe house, off the grid. We'll move you there tonight. You'll be under protection until this investigation is done. I hesitated. My home was all I had left of my old life. But when I looked into my children's terrified eyes, I knew we couldn't stay. Not with shadows watching. Not with David's darkness still reaching for us. We were moved under the cover of night. Black SUVs, tinted windows, federal escorts. It felt surreal, like I was living in someone else's story. We drove for hours until the city lights faded and only woods surrounded us. The safe house was a small cabin tucked away in the forest. It was quiet, isolated, the kind of place where you could hear every creak of the wood and every whisper of the wind. This will be your home until further notice, Cole explained. There's security outside. No one gets in without clearance. I nodded, though unease gnawed at my chest. Silence had always been my enemy. Too much silence let the memories creep back in. David's voice, his footsteps, his control. And now, here we were surrounded by it. The first night I barely slept. Every snap of a twig outside, every owl call made me jump. At one point I crept to the window and saw a red dot glowing faintly in the trees. My breath caught.
A camera lens.
Someone was watching. The next morning I told Cole what I had seen. He and his men swept the area and found a small surveillance camera, carefully hidden among the branches. This wasn't ours, he said, his face pale. Someone knows you're here. Panic rose in my throat. But you said we were safe. You promised. We will keep you safe, Cole said firmly. But this means David's network is bigger than we thought. Whoever these people are, they're organized. They won't stop. Timothy overheard. His small voice cut into the room. Mama, are we ever going to be free? I wanted to answer. I wanted to say yes, to promise him peace. But the truth sat heavy in my chest, choking me. That night, the danger escalated. Alarms blared suddenly, shattering the silence. Floodlights lit up the cabin as armed men in masks stormed the perimeter, exchanging gunfire with the agents outside. Sarah screamed and Timothy pulled her under the table. I grabbed the skillet, my instinctive weapon. Though I knew it was useless against guns. My heart raced as bullets tore through the night. And then the front door burst open. One of the masked men stood there, his gun raised, his voice cold. Mrs. Anderson, it's time to finish what your son started.